necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. This evening, this evening's session will focus on the opening of the new Pleasant Plains Elementary School and other related recommendations in the western area of the district, including recommendations related to the newly renovated Baucom Elementary School. As a reminder, today's session was prepared by the Office of Student Assignment, and the information we will review with you this evening is a subset of the full presentation that was shared with the board during their work session on September 3rd. Again, this evening's session will focus on the opening of the new Pleasant Plains Elementary School and other related recommendations in the western area of their district, including recommendations related to the newly renovated Baucom Elementary School. Otra vez, si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Before we begin, let me go over some logistics. Our session will last for no more than an hour and a half. We will begin with a presentation and conclude by responding to questions from today's session. We recognize that now and throughout the session, you may have questions regarding the proposal or the recommended stability rules. To capture your questions, we will be using the Q&A feature within Google Meet. To access this feature from a computer, please click on the three shapes in the toolbar on your screen. If you are using a mobile device, select the three dots first, then select the icon with the three shapes. You should then see a Q&A feature identified by a question mark icon. To ensure your questions are anonymous, our host and moderators will be monitoring the Q&A for questions and capturing them throughout this evening's session. Once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that means your question has been successfully captured by our moderators and you do not need to resubmit your question. We will make every effort to respond to your questions toward the end of our session. In addition, we will use your questions to update the FAQ portion of our website. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. In addition, we are asking that you contribute to the larger community discussion related to this initial draft of the 25-26 school enrollment proposal via the Thought Exchange. The Thought Exchange will remain open through September 29th. After it is closed, we will summarize the feedback received through the Thought Exchange and will share this summary with the board during their work session on October 15. No one will be personally identified in the summary. Before I turn things over to Susan, we would like to remind you that today's session will focus on the opening of the new Pleasant Plains Elementary School and other related recommendations in the western area of our district, including recommendations related to the newly renovated Baucom Elementary School. I would like to welcome to the discussion Kristen Small, who is the principal at Turner Creek Elementary School. By the end of this evening's session, you will have had the opportunity to review the assignment planning process, review recommendations included in the initial draft specific to your area of the district, share thoughts and ideas via Thought Exchange for review and consideration by both staff and board members, and perhaps most importantly, share questions that will help you gain a better understanding of the potential impacts of the proposed plan for your family. And now I will turn things over to Susan.
Eric, thank you for welcoming everyone and getting us started. And again, for our families, thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. As a quick reminder, we will be using the Q&A feature, and we'll show that screen a couple of times throughout our session to capture your questions for tonight's session. So if you do have questions that pop up throughout the initial part of our presentation, please use that Q&A feature. And again, in a few slides, I will share that with you so that just in case you've missed that, you'll have that information. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I'm just very grateful for this opportunity to share information with you about the current or initial draft of the 2025-2026 enrollment plan. To provide some context, on September 3rd, staff members presented the initial draft of the new student assignment proposal to the Board of Education. The draft does include proposed school assignment changes specific to the 2025-2026 school year. As has been mentioned in a couple of previous slides, we are going to talk about the opening of Pleasant Plains, but this year's student assignment proposal actually focuses on the opening of 4 new schools: Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove High School. It also includes base assignment changes, calendar application changes, and other recommendations to relieve capped and overcrowded schools in our district, while also working to fill some of our underutilized schools. Many, not all, but many of these changes will allow students to attend a less crowded school, and in many cases to have a shorter bus drive or a bus route. But again, not in all cases, but in many. The proposal also does include stability rules for families impacted by the recommendations included in the current proposal. All of the information we will share during tonight's presentation, along with other tools and resources to help you better understand the recommendations included in the initial draft, are located on our district website. The enrollment proposal website that you see at the top of your screen is specifically designed to help you access information about the proposal for the 25-26 school year. It will be updated regularly as new information and resources are available throughout this year's process, including updated FAQs and video resources. The main website that you see on the lower portion of the screen is a great resource for anyone that's interested to learn more about the complete planning process that we use as a district as we prepare to develop our annual enrollment plans. We recognize that some of you may just now be joining us or may have joined us since Eric, our host, gave you some instructions on how to submit questions. So just as a reminder, if you'd like to submit questions for today's session, please check your toolbars. If you are using a computer, we'd like for you to look for that Q&A feature on your computer and click on those 3 shapes. That will let you then see that question mark icon that you're looking for. If you're using a mobile device, you're going to want to click on these 3 dots first, and then you'll see those shapes. And then ultimately what you're looking for is that question mark in the Q&A feature. Just as a quick reminder, we will be making sure that all of your questions are recorded anonymously. So once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that's your indication that the moderators have captured your question and you do not need to resubmit that question. We will make every effort to respond to all of your questions toward the end of today's session. Also, we just want to do a quick reminder that our thought exchange for this initial draft is currently open and will remain open through September 29th. This is the best way to share thoughts and ideas that can be shared not only with our planning team, but also our board members, as all of them have access to all of the thoughts that are being posted in the thought exchange. We will close after it closes on September 9th. We'll prepare a summary and we'll share that summary with the board during their work session on October 15th. To ensure that you have a better understanding of how this year's proposal was developed, we're going to take just a few minutes, and I do mean a few minutes. We won't go spend too much time on this, but we want to briefly review our planning process and our public engagement progress to date. The policy that guides the development of our district's annual enrollment plan is Board Policy 4150. This policy does direct staff to balance, to the extent reasonable, the goals and factors identified by 4 main pillars. Those pillars are student achievement, proximity, stability, and operational efficiency. Each of these pillars do have specific definitions within Board Policy 4150. So to help out, we're going to share a brief video that walks through those 4 pillars of the assignment policy. It does provide a foundation for the process that we use in the development of our current draft of the enrollment proposal.
Understanding student assignment. It's no secret that our school district is growing, and it's growing fast. That means each year we need to address overcrowded schools and often need to open new schools to keep up with this growth. To state the obvious, we may have to reduce the enrollment at an existing school or fill new schools with students. This is done through the annual student assignment process. To best understand when and where new growth is coming in our district, we conduct an annual enrollment forecast. This forecast helps us look ahead up to 10 years and project enrollment growth throughout the district. This information helps us update our capital improvement plan and to make more informed decisions related to school assignments. Each year, some students are assigned to one of our new schools or reassigned to an existing school. This ensures we have balanced school populations across the district. We know families love their schools and that student assignment decisions can be worrisome. That's why we want to be completely transparent in how we make them. Our school board has established 4 pillars that guide each and every student assignment decision. Here's what they mean and how they work together. Student achievement. We want all of our schools to provide the best academic opportunities for our students. This pillar compels us to think about whether a student assignment plan can help reduce high concentrations of poverty or low-performing students at some of our schools. Stability. Essentially, we try to keep as many children at their current school through the exit grade as possible. When reassignments are necessary, we provide the opportunity for some students to submit a stability transfer request and stay at their current school through the exit grade. Operational efficiency. This pillar is about making sure all of our schools and transportation resources are at their best use. Overcrowded schools are a problem. Classrooms packed with too many students are one thing. But then there are the endless carpool lines, bathroom facilities that can't comfortably accommodate everyone, and having to start lunch when most people are still working on breakfast. On the flip side, having under-enrolled schools is an inefficient use of public resources, particularly when there are crowded schools nearby. Proximity. Okay, this one can be a little tricky. In a perfect world, houses would be built in neat little rows on a predictable timeline and at a slow and steady rate. As it is, we live in an imperfect world where lots and lots of homes pop up in one area, while growth is slight or non-existent in others. For this reason, it is impossible to send every child to their most proximate school unless we want some of our schools bursting at the seams while others are half empty. That said, this pillar states that we will send students to schools within a reasonable distance. Often, the difference between the most proximate school and the next most proximate school is no more than a couple of miles. Please remember that we must consider all 4 of these pillars when making assignment decisions. There is no priority among the 4 that applies in every situation. It's a balancing act that ultimately helps us come up with the best possible plan for everyone. Thank you for working with us to ensure our school system continues to serve all students well. Understanding student assignment.
It never fails. It always wants to restart. I apologize for that. Hopefully that video helped to explain the different pillars that are in that policy a little bit better. For more information on anything related to the policy or our planning, please continue to visit our website, as an entire copy of the policy is available for those of you that are interested in reading it in its entirety. So in addition to the guidances provided by Board Policy 4150, we do follow an annual planning cycle that has 6 major components to it. The first step is the presentation of the annual enrollment forecast. The forecast provides both 1- and 10-year projections for enrollment growth in the district. Even though the enrollment forecast provides a 10-year projection for enrollment in the district, it is updated annually to account for any changes in residential development patterns, home sales, birth rates, and other areas that impact enrollment forecasts, business development, all those sorts of things. Simply knowing how many students the district needs to be prepared to serve is helpful. However, knowing where within and throughout the district this growth is expected is particularly useful for us during the development of the annual enrollment plan. The map here depicts the projected change in total student population residing in various areas across the district over the next 10 years. What you should notice is that this growth is not evenly distributed throughout the district. You're probably aware that you're in a high growth area, and that some areas of the district are projected to stabilize and have minimal changes in student numbers over the next 10 years. I've highlighted the region that will be discussed in today's presentation for additional context. As I mentioned, we're going to go through these steps pretty quickly, and I'll show you a place where you can look at these in greater detail for those of you that are interested in diving deeper into the 6 steps of our planning process. The next step in our process is to view the projected crowding for the next school year. So in addition to providing that 10-year outlook, the annual forecast does give us a 1-year projection that we can use not only to determine the funding needs for the district, but also to project crowding throughout the district going into the next school year. In this case, the projections that were shared help us determine projections in March of 2024, and those were for the current 2024-25 school year. Here you see a quick look at the projected crowding for our elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the district based on that annual forecast. Again, highlighting the area of focus that we'll be discussing in today's session. Just a quick context, the darker the red or orange color, the more crowded it's projected to be, meaning well above 100%, in this case, well above 110%. If it's yellow, then it's kind of in that 95 to 100% range. And so as you can see in this region, there's quite a few schools that are projected to be at or above 100% crowding for this current school year. Oops, I went a little too fast. Highlighted here, we'll now talk about the third step in the process, which is the review of the capital improvement plan, also known as the CIP. It does include any adjustments that have been made throughout the planning process. And so at this point in the process, not only do we take stock of which new schools are still on schedule and projected to open, but we also get an update on any major renovations that might be adding capacity to schools throughout the district. Highlighted in the green circle is the general location of the new Woods Creek Elementary that opened this past July. Some of you may have even attended school at this campus as you were Baucom students. Baucom did spend about a year or so in that facility while they were waiting for the renovations to complete. The orange circles that you see here are the 4 schools that are projected to open for the 2025-2026 school year. And so we'll talk about at least one of those during this evening's presentation. And the darker gray circles share with you what's going on in the future years of that CIP or capital improvement plan. Shown to you a little bit differently, this chart shows the projected opening for all approved new school projects in the 7-year CIP. Please note that although those major renovations that I mentioned earlier are happening during this same time and are not depicted here on this chart, they are accounted for during the annual enrollment process or enrollment planning process. I do want to pause for a moment, acknowledge the asterisks that you might be seeing beside all of the school names here and everywhere throughout the chart. Those asterisks do remind us that all of our major projects, both new schools and major renovations, have the potential for completion date changes based on market volatility, scope changes, and changes in design or construction schedules. Essentially, we're constantly monitoring the progress of all of our construction projects and will adjust recommendations to the annual enrollment plan as needed. At this time, you can see in orange that we're planning for the opening of Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove Elementary, all in the 2025-26 school year. In addition, Baucom Elementary and Fuquay-Varina Middle have moved into their newly renovated campuses with some expanded capacity this school year, and recommendations for both of those schools are included in the initial draft proposal. During today's presentation, we'll specifically review the recommendations for the new Pleasant Plains Elementary as well as that expanded capacity at Baucom Elementary. Once the forecast is completed, the projected crowding has been assessed, and capital improvement plan updates have been reviewed, we're now ready to begin step 4 of our process, which is the preparation of the annual enrollment plan. The first step is to initiate public engagement activities. And so hopefully some of you were able to join us between that March and May timeframe, where we went out into the community and captured thoughts and ideas from families and community members to help inform the development of the enrollment plan. For this year's plan, again, those sessions were held in March to May. For a complete summary of all the thoughts and ideas captured from families and community members during this year's public engagement process, please visit our enrollment planning site. So that site on the bottom, that'll have links to all of the information that we captured from those sessions. Overall, we had an increase of about 75% for participants attending our in-person sessions as well as our virtual sessions, as compared to the same time last year when we hosted sessions in 2023. You can also see the participation information for this specific area highlighted in green. Participants in these sessions were presented with two core questions, essentially, and these core questions were really designed to generate conversation and we sort of kind of let the conversation go where it would. Specifically, they were asked to share thoughts about what district leadership should take into consideration when opening new schools in a community, as well as in general managing growth and school crowding. As I mentioned, we're not going to spend a lot of time on these. This full presentation is available on our website, so if you'd like to look at these in greater detail, you can. But as you can see, many thoughts and ideas were generated and captured during these sessions, and we really have taken these ideas and concerns into consideration throughout the planning process. Here you see a few more of those key takeaways from these sessions, and again, full summaries of all of these sessions are available on our assignment planning website. In addition to those live or in-person sessions, we also hosted several different thought exchanges so that we could increase access for families and community members to this important discussion. Overall, we had an increase in thoughts submitted of about 275% compared to exchanges that we hosted on similar subjects in 2023. You can see the participation information for the exchanges specific to this area highlighted in green. And here you see just a quick sample of the results of the thought exchange specific to your area. Again, for a full summary of this information, we do encourage you to continue to visit our assignment planning website. We're often asked, what do we do with this information that we gather during these spring public engagement sessions? And a few examples of how we extend the work of those sessions is by reviewing and assessing the information gathered to determine if any topics require a more detailed exploration. This year, we did identify a key question related to calendar alignment, and some of you are already expressing it in the thought exchange, and I've taken a peek. I've seen some of the questions that you're posted. This idea that we might need to have multi-track year-round elementary schools and then go on to traditional middle and high schools and get some feedback from families about that. We've recently concluded those interviews. They were AI-supported interviews. We were able to expand our offering and participation in that to people who volunteered to participate in focus groups. And we're going to share the findings of that set of interviews with our board at a future work session. Another way that we extended that conversation from those spring public engagement sessions was to really thoughtfully consider how we could amend, revise, or provide stability rules that give as much stability as possible to families while also allowing the district to be efficient in its operation of schools. The last thing that you'll see here on this slide is that one of the major key things that we take away is cohort continuity and sort of community continuity, as well as calendar continuity. So those types of ideas were also heavily considered by the planning team when developing the recommendations for this year. Again, these are just a few examples of how we work to incorporate the feedback we receive during this, that we receive from families and community members in preparing the initial draft of recommendations for the first draft of the enrollment plan. Once we've done that, we also, at some point in this process, this year it was in May, we start having a clarifying conversation with our board to determine what the board, has decided should be included in a particular year's enrollment plan. So for this year's enrollment plan, in addition to developing attendance areas for new schools, the board asked us to consider addressing crowding and cap schools where possible, as well as to address other important school choice options for the district. Specifically, the board asked that we continue the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, as well as continuing to work toward improving operational and transportation efficiency. That full presentation is also available on our website, should you care to review it. At this stage in the planning process for the annual enrollment plan, we're ready to share the initial draft recommendations for the board's review and consideration, and that's sort of where we are now. However, before we dive into the recommendations, I would like to briefly review with you steps 5 and 6 in this planning cycle. The information on this side reflects step 5 in the planning process, reviewing and approving cap schools. schools due to overcrowding concerns. This work is generally completed after the approval of an annual enrollment plan. So once the board approved the 24-25 enrollment plan last fall, back in November, the staff then reviewed which schools were still facing overcrowding concerns and brought specific capping recommendations to the board in February. You can see the names of the schools in your area that are currently capped highlighted in green. And you'll also notice that at least one of your schools has the designation of a FP or feeder pattern cap, meaning it has an extended cap beyond just a basic traditional cap. And then here you see step 6 in the planning process, reviewing options to address other school utilization concerns. In particular, part 3 of this step, a review of schools operating on a year-round calendar that did not have long-term crowding concerns, did result in the board approving calendar changes for 2 of our middle schools for the 25-26 school year. These are not in your region, so they're not highlighted in green, but we just wanted to make you aware of how the process continues on after the approval of the annual enrollment plan. Again, as a reminder, all of the information related to our 6-step planning process can be found on our assignment planning website. In addition, we've created a separate website for information specific to this year's enrollment plan, or the 25-26 enrollment plan, and that's the site you see at the top of this slide. I'm assuming you visited there since you're here today. All right, and a reminder, at any time during the presentation, you're invited to post questions using the Q&A tool, and I can see that several of you have already used that tool, so it looks like most of you have been able to find it, but just in case you're joining us a little bit late, you're looking for that shape on your toolbar, the triangle, square, and circle shapes. If you don't see that and you're on a mobile device, you might want to look for those 3 dots first and then find those shapes. And then, of course, you're looking for that question mark to let you know you found the Q&A feature. Again, we're going to capture all of those questions anonymously. So once you see that your question has been removed, that lets you know that our moderators have successfully captured the question. And I'm going to work really hard to quickly move through the next few slides so that we can get to those questions as quickly as possible. Again, our thought exchange remains open. That is your best avenue to make sure information and concerns and comments that you have about the initial draft are able to be reviewed by the board. After it closes on September 9th, we will do a complete summary of all of the information collected and share that with the board during our review with them on October 15th. All right, so at this point, we're going to start moving into the specific recommendations for this region, and it's our hope that you will find that the following recommendations do take into account information shared in the review and update section of our presentation today, which includes guidance provided by Board Policy 4150, the input and feedback collected from families and community members over the last couple of years, the need to address capped and overcrowded schools in this region in particular, while being mindful of future school openings, the need to continue the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, and our need to support improvements in both operational and transportation efficiency. Just as a quick summary, for the 25-26 enrollment plan, we have completed steps 1 through 3, and we're now in the middle of step 4, which will carry us through the end of November. Once the board approves a final plan, then we'll be ready to start initiating steps 5 and 6. We'll start with an overview of the base assignment changes recommended in the entire draft by grade span. So what you're seeing here is a map of the elementary schools. The area that we'll be talking about today is mostly highlighted in this region of the county, but hopefully you'll notice that a vast majority of our county is unaffected or not included in this initial draft, as we really have worked to focus on the opening of the 3 new schools in the southern and southwestern portions of our district. Here you'll see the impacts at the middle school level. Again, very few impacts at the middle school level. The vast majority of the district is not impacted by recommendations in this draft. The vast majority of the small recommendations that are included are related to the opening of the new elementary schools, or perhaps our high school, Felton Grove, some calendar or feeder pattern alignments. And there are 1 or 2 that are based on proximity and transportation efficiency as well. And at the high school level, as you can see, it's largely related to the opening of Felton Grove High School, with a handful of other adjustments based on either transportation or operational efficiency. So as we get ready to talk about the recommendations for this region, we're specifically going to walk through the recommendations for developing an attendance area for the new Pleasant Plains Elementary School. And we're also going to talk about some recommendations related to the expanded capacity now available at the newly renovated Baucom Elementary School. But before we jump in, we do know that stability rules tend to be top of mind for most of our families. So we want to talk about the stability rules that are currently proposed for families that are impacted by the recommendations that we're going to talk about today. So the opening of a new school, as well as movement from existing schools to take advantage of that capacity at Baucom. So please note that the recommendations related to Pleasant Plains Elementary, because it is a new school, will be slightly different than the recommendations for other types of moves included in this initial draft. So we'll start specifically with opening a new school. So for students that are living in attendance areas that are projected to be assigned to the new Pleasant Plains Elementary School, the stability rules that are recommended are very similar to those, in fact, exactly the same as the ones that we used for Woods Creek last year. The idea here is expanded stability. If you'll recall from the video, when we talk about stability, the only thing it says in policy is that we would allow rising fifth graders to stay at their current school if they're impacted by reassignment. Based on feedback from the community over the last several years, we've realized that anything we can do to expand that and add more grade levels would be, beneficial to families and supported by both families and schools. And so what we've determined is that from an operational efficiency standpoint, balancing that with the stability needs of our family, we've expanded the stability rules for the opening of new schools. And so instead of it just being fifth graders that are eligible, both fourth and fifth graders. So what that means is if your student today is a third or a fourth grader, that therefore next year for 25-26 would be a fourth or a fifth grader. They would be eligible under the current proposed stability rules to remain at their current school. The only caveat is that we can't provide district transportation, and we do recognize that that is an obstacle for some families. However, with the current national and regional bus driver shortage, it's how we can sort of find that happy medium. Certainly, if you can find a way to do carpool, you're welcome to stay. If you need that district transportation, you may want to elect to go to the new school, or if you prefer the new school because it's closer to your home or you like the calendar. There's all kinds of reasons why families might elect to go to the new school. The other thing that we did to expand stability for families is to enhance the sibling portion of this rule. In the past, that rising fifth grade student could stay and any younger siblings could stay for the 1 year that that student was in fifth grade. And then once that fifth grader moved on to middle school, all of those younger siblings would be assigned to the base school for the address. So to address stability for families, we've made a recommendation to expand this stability rule to provide much more generous stability rules for our families, so that if you do have an eligible rising fourth or fifth grade student who could, take advantage of the stability rules, and any younger siblings that would like to join them, they can not only join them for that year or two, they can actually stay through the end of fifth grade if that's what works best for your family. Again, there's no district transportation provided, but those expanded stability rules we feel is a way to try to provide that stability for families, so that if you'd like to stay at your current school where you've developed some relationships and you have those older students that are eligible, those younger students can join and stay through. And so we'll talk probably a little bit later about the specifics about stability transfers, because I'm sure a lot of you are going to have questions, so I won't stick here too long, but I just wanted to share that expanded stability rules for the opening of new schools is really reflective and responsive to the feedback that we received from community members and families over the last couple of years. You'll see the note that these do need to be submitted during the stability transfer window, and that's specifically because the only way we can guarantee that we can approve them is if we get them during that time period. Other changes. So because this area is impacted by what I call maybe cascading or domino impacts with the opening or the expanded capacity at Baucom Elementary, and some seat availability is going to become open at Scotts Ridge as a result of the opening of Pleasant Plains. If anyone's being recommended to go from, let's say, Olive Chapel to Scotts Ridge, or from Olive Chapel to Baucom, or Salem to Baucom, any families in those situations, because it's an existing school with an existing complement of students and existing teaching staff, we have really expanded and generous stability rules. Any student at any grade would be eligible to stay at their current school if they can provide their own transportation, and those younger siblings can join them as well. And again, those are all valid through the end of 5th grade. There are a couple of middle school changes in this area that we're going to address just because we've got so many families on the call. So if there's anyone who's impacted by those middle school changes, again, because they're all going to be from an existing school to an existing school, we're not opening any new middle schools this year. Any student that can provide their own transportation that would like to remain at their current school would be eligible to do so under the current proposed stability rules. For more details on all of this, you're certainly, again, welcome to visit our website. And there's a lot of FAQs there as well, but of course you're here tonight, so we're going to answer those questions live at the end of this session as well. So this is how you post your questions. I see them flooding in fast and furious, so I don't think anyone's having any issues finding the Q&A feature, but just a quick reminder, use the Q&A feature in the Google Meet if you'd like to post a question for today's session. And again, please continue contributing to the discussion in the thought exchange. All right, so let's jump in. For Pleasant Plains Elementary, it is one of our new elementary schools. Pleasant Plains Elementary is very close to the existing Scotts Ridge Elementary. I think most of you probably are familiar with where it's located, but here's where it is roughly within the entire county or within the entire district. It's in the Apex area. Pleasant Plains currently is recommended to open as a multi-track year-round school, which will give it a capacity of 924 students. The reason that staff is recommending this for all of our new elementary schools is because if you'll notice on that CIP, there's really not any more elementary schools coming in this region over the next 7 or so years. And so we feel like it's, from a taxpayer fiscal responsibility sort of stewardship lens, to provide the most capacity possible with the very first opening year, the better, so that we can handle and manage all the growth that's coming in this region. At this time, there are 3 base attendance areas that are projected to sort of be drawn from to build the base for Pleasant Plains Elementary, and that's Apex Elementary, Apex Friendship Elementary, and Scotts Ridge Elementary. In addition, because of some availability that's going to be created at Scotts Ridge, Olive Chapel is impacted, but it is not recommended to send any students to the new school. So that means any student in the current proposal that are recommended to come from Olive Chapel to a different school, they would all have those most generous stability rules. But the students that are currently attending Apex or Apex Friendship or Scotts Ridge would be in those slightly more restricted stability rules, where you'd need to be a 4th or a 5th grader or the younger sibling of one of those 4th or 5th graders. The blue that you're seeing here on the table lets you know that this is the before data. In other words, if we make no changes to the attendance areas for these schools, you can see the projected crowding for the 25-26 school year. They're all near or significantly above 100%. And of course, at our elementary level, that creates all kinds of complications. You saw it in the video with carpool, lunch, just having space to move around the building, being able to have sufficient time at recess. And as you can see, because you're a high growth area, all of those numbers are projected to get even higher going into the next school year. Again, we will be using the Q&A feature, so we will not be answering live questions. We want to make sure all your questions are confidential, so please post your questions to the Q&A feature. So here you see the 2 maps that we use to demonstrate what we're sort of projecting. And so this map over here represents the before. The colors that you see here represent the current attendance areas for each of the schools. So the dark green that you see here represents the existing Olive Chapel Elementary School base attendance area. This sort of periwinkle or light blue color represents the current Apex Friendship Elementary base attendance area. The magenta-ish purpley kind of color represents the current Scotts Ridge Elementary base attendance area. And this sort of orangish color represents the current Apex Elementary base attendance area. Because Pleasant Plains Elementary is so proximate to Scotts Ridge Elementary, the current recommendation is to focus on this area. And you can kind of see the hashed marked area right here. This is the current area that's being proposed to become the new attendance area for Pleasant Plains, which you now see on this side in yellow. We've received a lot of feedback about the proximity of Pleasant Plains Elementary to some newer neighborhoods that are on that side of the county. We're assessing all of that. I believe Depot 499 is the most common neighborhood that's come up that, say, hey, we're super close to Pleasant Plains. So we are evaluating all of that as we receive all that feedback in. So that's an example of how we're truly trying to dig in and see what families are providing as information. But right now, this is the current projected attendance area. The other portion, and so you can see there in yellow, that becomes sort of the recommended attendance area. What this does is relieves capped Apex Friendship Elementary, capped Scotts Ridge Elementary, and relatively full Apex Elementary. If you don't recall, Apex Elementary was one of our capped schools just about a year or so ago and recently had its cap removed. The other portion of this map that I want to draw to your attention and that is labeled here with a number 2 is a portion of the current Olive Chapel Elementary base attendance area. Again, one of our capped, very crowded, overcrowded schools. This portion of the attendance area is currently being proposed to move from Olive Chapel to Scotts Ridge Elementary and become part of Scotts Ridge Elementary's base attendance area so that we can take advantage of some of that space that's been created at Scotts Ridge by the opening of Pleasant Plains and provide some relief to Olive Chapel Elementary. Here in the orange label, that sort of gives you the indication you're now looking at after numbers. So what you're seeing here is that after these proposed changes, we do see a bit of a stabilization. Still not perfect. We still have some schools like Apex Friendship and Olive Chapel that are well above 100% crowding, even with these proposed changes. You'll also notice that there's an asterisk here beside Olive Chapel. That's just to let you know that it's going to be, it's projected currently to be impacted by a couple of moves. And so this is a sum total of all of those moves. So that number will be the same on any chart that you see Olive Chapel on. As you can see, this would sort of start Pleasant Plains a little bit under enrolled. This is in response to feedback we've received from community members about trying to do a balance of existing neighborhoods and new developing neighborhoods to build an attendance area for an elementary school so that over time, as those new developments build out, the school gets bigger and bigger and bigger each year. For Baucom Elementary, very, very proximate to this campus or to this region, we're not recommending a calendar change. It's currently operating on a traditional calendar. We would recommend maintaining that calendar. However, we are going to notice that the original building at this site had a capacity of 508, and in its newly renovated form, it has a capacity of 716. And so they're going to spend this year kind of taking advantage of all that new space and filling in, and then we do want to take advantage of that space long term and provide some relief to nearby schools, particularly those that are capped or projected to be overcrowded in the near future. So what you'll see for this map, again, similar things. The dark green represents the current Olive Chapel base attendance area. This sort of pinkish purpley color represents the current Salem Elementary base attendance area. This sort of aqua color is the current Baucom Elementary base attendance area, which does include this piece over here. Seagrove Farms is one of the communities that's in that area. This bluish area represents the current Laurel Park Elementary base attendance area, and this orange represents the current Penny Road base attendance area. And so what you'll see in the recommendations is a focus on the western side of Baucom. This road here is 540. This is 55 or Williams or GB Alford, depending on which part of the county that you're in. And so the recommendation is to take those two portions of both the Salem base attendance area and the Olive Chapel base attendance area and realign them to Baucom Elementary to take advantage of that expanded capacity. So you'll see that that would be the new attendance area. We have heard from a couple of communities that are particularly in the Olive Chapel portion, with Ashley Downs and Pearson Farms, mentioning that there's a sidewalk and that sometimes they might even walk to Olive Chapel Elementary. And so the good news there is that with all of the growth that's coming on this side of Olive Chapel, the best that we could do to provide relief to Olive Chapel was to maybe come to that sort of eastern edge of its attendance area and take advantage of the capacity at Baucom. However, those families, because it is Olive Chapel to Baucom, existing elementary school to existing elementary school, they would have those most generous attendant or stability rules, and any student at any grade that's currently attending Olive Chapel would be permitted to stay under those stability rules as long as the family put in that request during the stability window. And again, we can talk about that a little bit later. So there is a way for those families that are truly walking to school to be able to continue to do so, because obviously district transportation would not be provided. But if you don't need it, then that's sort of a perfect situation. However, new residents, newer students would slowly eventually start to become part of that Baucom base attendance area. There is a portion over here that is non-contiguous with the existing base attendance area for Baucom, and with all of those students coming in from those two areas. The Salem attendance area is a bit of a high growth area. There's some new developments that are being built in this, as well as some existing students. And then this portion of Salem is a really high growth part of their base attendance area. So to get ahead of that growth, we're recommending that this portion from Salem Elementary become part of Baucom to provide initial relief to Salem in advance of the growth that's coming, as well as to take advantage of that capacity at Baucom. The other portion of this attendance area that's impacted is the portion for Baucom that's non-contiguous. And so the recommendation there is based on the fact that there's an existing transportation route and it's very proximate to the neighborhood, just slightly south of it, that become part of Penny Road Elementary. And we have heard from several families that would prefer to stay at Baucom. So again, the most expansive stability rules would be in place. If you can provide your own transportation, you're certainly welcome to take advantage of those stability transfers if this recommendation goes forward as currently proposed. The other portion that we're going to talk about is this little portion of Salem Elementary. We're recommending that that be added to the Laurel Park Elementary base attendance area. Again, just rebalancing some of the projected growth that's going to come in this area to make some room at Salem for that growth that's coming in the future, and to take advantage of some space at Laurel Park. We've heard from some families about Laurel Park and its current track configuration. This would not change that. They would maintain their current track configuration. This would just provide a more stable base attendance area over time for the school. All right, and here we have the before and after charts all on one page. Again, all of this is on our website if this is too small to look at on our screen today, but you can see that schools like Olive Chapel are significantly reduced. Schools like Laurel Park are able to pick up some additional students and then take that growth forward. We're looking at Baucom is a little concerning at this rate, but the reason that this is so high is because Baucom is currently serving as an overflow school for both Scotts Ridge Elementary and Apex Friendship Elementary. And so with some of the changes that we're recommending, that number is projected to rapidly decrease and stabilize into 112% is most likely not going to be the crowding factor for Baucom Elementary. However, Olive Chapel isn't officially 100% relieved, but we're getting a little bit closer. Keep in mind that all of these crowding numbers are based on the full utilization of these buildings with all of the trailers that they currently have on their campus. So for some schools where perhaps they're looking to reduce their dependency on trailers, we'd still have even more work to do over time to try to relieve the crowding in those areas. But as you can see here, Salem is going to continue to grow over the next couple of years. And so with those generous stability rules, it's quite possible that these numbers won't exactly be just like this. So just as a quick reminder, the after numbers, the ones you see in the orange label table, do presume that every single student that's impacted by the projected reassignment goes to the new school. And we know with these generous stability rules, the reality will be somewhere in the middle. I can see a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to start going a little bit faster so we can get to those questions. A couple of middle school changes that are recommended in your area. We just wanted to provide awareness for any of you that might be impacted by these. As a result of the opening of Felton Grove and some other realignments, we've identified one small area that's hanging out inside the current Apex Middle School base attendance area. That's a remnant. It's the only neighborhood that's going to Apex Friendship Middle, but not also going to Apex Friendship Elementary and Apex Friendship High in this region. So the idea is to align this with their peers and to move forward into Apex Middle. I believe they're in that sort of Scotts Ridge area. And so this would allow those families to have that continuity of cohort with their friends and go forward into middle school together. Again, since this is existing to existing, it would be the most generous stability rules. So any student who could provide their own transportation would be more than welcome to finish out at Apex Friendship Middle. And just the new families would need to start at Apex. And here you can see this does provide a little bit of relief to the capped Apex Friendship Middle School, which would then maybe make some room for students, not so many students to have to be overflowed or capped out. And then a couple of technical changes in this region. When Woods Creek Elementary was opened, the intent was that all of the Woods Creek Elementary base attendance area would also move forward to Lufkin Road Middle by base assignment. And in this year, when we were doing our assessment of last year's plan, we realized this one small little area right here remained assigned to Apex Middle. So it's the only neighborhood in the entire Woods Creek Elementary base attendance area that's not moving forward to Lufkin. So as a technical correction, we wanted to bring this in so that that cohort continuity could be achieved for this entire school. In addition, with the opening of Woods Creek Elementary, in the past, Holly Springs Elementary's base attendance area was split in terms of middle school between Lufkin Road Middle and Holly Ridge Middle. With the opening of Woods Creek, any portion of their old base that used to go to Lufkin is now part of the Woods Creek Elementary base attendance area. So what's left of the Holly Springs elementary base attendance area all goes to Holly Ridge Middle, with the exception of this two little spaces right here. Currently, these are not zoned as residential, so there's no students impacted by this recommendation, but we want to get ahead in the event that in the future there is a rezoning in this area. If anybody were to become a student in this area, we'd want them to be able to move forward with their cohort and go on to Holly Ridge Middle. So again, I sort of refer to these as technical corrections just to get ahead of some cohort continuity concerns that might face us in the future. As you can see here, it's not a significant impact on any of the schools. As I mentioned, there's not very many students in either area. All right, calendar application changes. So the last thing that we have to bring before the board is if for some reason we want to change the calendar application school for an area or remove a calendar application school for an area, we need to bring that to the board as that is seen as an assignment change. In the last couple of assignment plans or enrollment plans, we have done some pretty drastic changes. Whole base attendance areas not being able to have transportation to the opposite calendar from their base. That's not to say that you can't ask for that. It's just we're no longer providing transportation. And again, that's just largely in response to the bus driver shortage that everyone is keenly aware of. So what you'll see in this year's plan is instead of anything that's based on trying to, truly reduce all those transportation impacts, because we made a significant impact last year and the year before, this year's changes are all directly related to those assignment recommendations you saw earlier. So by way of example, on this top row, currently there's a portion of the Apex Elementary base attendance area that sees Laurel Park Elementary as its multi-track year-round option. That part of the Apex Elementary base attendance area is currently proposed to become part of the Pleasant Plains base attendance area, which, as you know, is being recommended to be a multi-track year-round school. Therefore, this attendance area won't need a multi-track year-round option because it's base assigned to a multi-track school. So you'll see that NA pops up, which basically means there'll just no longer be a multi-track year-round option for the address because the base is multi-track year-round. If the families are interested in a traditional calendar, they would use the transfer process and look for a school that perhaps they could provide transportation to. In a different example, the area that's currently assigned to Baucom Elementary that's being proposed to be part of the Penny Road Elementary base attendance area currently sees Laurel Park as its multi-track year-round option. However, all the students at Penny Road actually see Oak Grove as their multi-track year-round option. So for cohort continuity, we wanted to align that and make that switch so that families would be able to follow together as a cohort into either of those two schools. The rest of the ones that you see on this slide are related to schools that are not in your region, but they're the same types of impacts. Again, not very many in your region to be impacted. Here's where you do see some significant impacts. But again, if you're currently at Olive Chapel multi-track year-round elementary school and your basis, your traditional calendar option is Baucom, well, if your base is assigned to Baucom, you won't need that as a traditional option. So as I stated at the board, for anybody who had a chance to review the presentation, I'd really love for these to just be technical corrections that we take care of on behalf of the board. But because they're part of that address lookup and you're seeing an assignment change or a transportation level change, we do bring them to the board for review and approval. I've seen a couple people try to raise their hands. As a reminder, we won't be using that feature in today's session, so please continue to use the Q&A feature. We're going to get to those questions very rapidly. At the middle school level, there's no impacts in your region for any of these calendar application changes, and the ones that you see on this screen are specifically related to those calendar changes I mentioned earlier at Pine Hollow and Roseville Middle. All right, we're going to get to questions rapidly. I just want to let you know where we are in the timeline. Here's where we are. The next time we go to the board is October 15th. And that's where we'll share a review of all the information we're gathering from sessions like this, the thought exchange, and our upcoming public information session. But I do want to alert everyone that there has been a change to the approval date. So if you were paying and finally tuned in on that first day, on September 3rd, we were recommending a November 12th approval date. The board, however, has decided that would be their public hearing date. So that's just pushed the plan just a little bit. So the official approval date won't be till November 26th. And here's where we are in the public engagement timeline. This is where we are today. If you know of anyone who couldn't join us today that might benefit from a session like this, please encourage them to join us tomorrow. We'll be doing a general overview of the entire plan, as well as focusing on some of those Raleigh area recommendations. And then we also have our first open house in quite some time that we're going to host at Herbert Akins Road Middle School. As a quick reminder, this is not the public hearing. That's the November 12th event. This is an opportunity to talk with academics, athletics, transportation, before and after school care, special programs, special education programs, about any questions you have about transitioning to a new school. And then we'll even have facilities people there, and we'll talk more about that. But I really saw a bunch of questions coming in. So I'm going to stop for a moment, remind everybody to check the website for all of the information we've shared today. If you've still got questions that you haven't posted yet, please keep using the question feature. Eric, I'm going to give it to you and take a drink of water, and then we'll get rolling.
That would be good, because it'll give me an opportunity to level set for our questions. Folks, there have been a lot of different things posted, and we want to answer as much as we possibly can. However, many people have put their individual situations in, simply made statements about not wanting certain things to happen or wanting other things to be considered. Those will certainly be reviewed. Our Q&A tonight, though, is to answer questions about this, and not to talk about your individual situations. That's something we can handle at a different time. You're certainly welcome to put them in, but as the public Q&A, again, part of the objective is that this needs to be anonymous, and so it's not talking about your individual situation, but also this is an opportunity to ask questions about this versus this is the stated opinion. We'll take those and we'll take a look at them. Every bit of feedback gets looked at. I can absolutely promise you that from years of being involved in this process. Your feedback will be looked at. But let's get to questions that revolve around, let's start with stability. Will students who will not begin kindergarten until 2026 and 2028 be included in the stability plan?
So it's sort of a yes and no, depending. All right. So the short answer is maybe. The long answer is if it's a student who does not have an older student attending that school. So I'm going to use the Olive Chapel de Baucom as my example. If I have an older student at Olive Chapel who's eligible under the stability rules, and I put in the transfer and I get the older student to stay, and by the time that kindergartner is getting ready to enter, that older student is still there, then what you'll use is the regular transfer window for our regular policy on putting siblings together at the same school. We don't have the ability to sort of give you a pre-stability transfer prior to the student registering or enrolling. So it's a bit of a yes and a no. If, however, that younger student is going to be the first in the family to attend school and is no one in the family has ever attended Olive Chapel, then the initial assignment would be to Baucom. You certainly could put in a transfer, but knowing the current situation and the captain crowding levels at the school, it would be highly unlikely that our staff could approve it. But I will say that those transfers that we review in March are always based on your individual hardships. So please make sure that you explain, specifically what is going on in your family, that there are always exceptions, and certainly the board can review those as well if they're eligible for an appeal. So the short answer, you've got an older student, it won't be through the stability transfer. It'll be through, oh, hang on, sorry, my computer's trying to restart. Okay, stopped it. That would have been terrible. If you've got that older student that's there and that younger student's going to be there at the same time as the older student, then just use the regular transfer period in the future. If, however, you've got a rising kindergartner who's getting ready to start in 25, I do want to do a quick public service announcement. Our pre-registration or pre-enrollment process will start around mid-October. I want to say it's the 14th or 15th. Eric can correct me if he's got the specific date. You can get them pre-registered so that by the time the stability window opens, you already have an ID number for that student and you can go ahead and take care of that transfer then. So there's a couple of different ways to go around that. But for 26 and 28, you'd want to use the regular transfer window, and it'll just depend on your personal circumstance as to whether or not they're able to join that older sibling or not.
October 14 is the current date. Things are supposed to open, assuming everything goes as planned. All right, I have a student assigned to Pleasant Plains per the proposal, but my other goes to a traditional high school. Holiday plans don't allow us to plan for vacations. Can the elementary student continue in the current base location?
Okay. So depending on the age of the student, maybe. Right. So if it's a rising 4th or 5th grade student, then yes, they'd be eligible under those stability rules to stay at their current assigned school. If they're not a rising 4th or 5th grader or don't have that older student to attach to, then they would initially be assigned to the new school. And if everything goes forward as it's currently drafted, let's just for conversation's sake, Pleasant Plains would be year round. You would still be able to and eligible to participate in all of our other application processes, just not the stability transfer. So you could still participate in the magnet process or the traditional, you request a traditional calendar school that meets your needs through the regular transfer process. I just can't guarantee that there'll be transportation provided. And I can't guarantee that we can approve all of them, of course, as we do have space limitations in some of our schools. But you still certainly are able to put in a request using the magnet application period or the traditional official transfer window. That's March. I'm looking to Eric for confirmation. March 4th-ish. March
3rd through 14th.
Thank you. And so that'll be a 10-day window. So you will still have those available to you. You just may not be able to get that guaranteed transfer through the stability transfer if you're not in that set of rules, if you don't meet the eligibility requirement for the stability rules.
I don't fully understand the definition of stability. It left out moving children from traditional to year-round, which destabilizes our family. Will we end up with 2 children on 2 different tracks?
Oh, tracks. Okay. So if we're talking about the possibility that you might have one student on a multi-track year-round calendar and one student on a traditional calendar, that does happen throughout our district more regularly than we'd like, but it's kind of where we are. Just as a quick reminder, at the elementary level, there's some very specific class size legislation that we must adhere to. You may be familiar with it. At kindergarten, there's an 18 student class size ratio of 18:1. At first grade at 16, and at second and third grade at 17 students. Those same types of class size legislation impacts are not applied to any of the other grades in our district. So at the elementary level, we do have to rely more and more on multi-track year-round schools to be able to accommodate all of those students and meet those class size demands. If you've heard presentations in the past, the year that legislation was approved, it was as if we lost thousands of elementary seats just by like a snap of a finger because of the way we had to start configuring all of our classes. So it is possible that for a period of time, there could be families that have a multi-track year-round elementary school, but then traditional middle and high school. And that's a question that we're continuing to explore as a district. So it is possible. But as far as tracks, no, our schools will work with you if you're at 2 schools that are both operating multi-track year-round calendars. So maybe you're at Lufkin or Salem on a multi-track year-round in your region. Those principals will work together to keep your family on the same track. So it won't be that one school be track 2 and one will be track 3 or something like that. They'll work to keep you all on the same track. But there is a possibility that some families might have a multi-track year-round elementary student in traditional middle or high school.
No older sibling. If we provide our own transportation, can we apply for a stability transfer?
So the stability transfers are very specific to the rules that the board adopts. So again, as a reminder, board policy says just 5th grade and younger siblings just for the 1 year that student is in 5th grade at the elementary level. At the middle school level, it's 8th, same rules, and at high school, it's 12th, same rules. For each enrollment plan, based on those situations and the conditions and sort of what we can manage as a district at that time, the board approves specific stability rules specific to the reassignment for that plan. And those rules are only in place for that one point in time. So if your student is not eligible under the board approved stability rules, then you would not get the invitation to participate in the stability transfer process. You still can participate in all the other application processes we have, as I mentioned earlier, like the magnet application process or the regular official transfer, sort of hardship transfer process. Those would still be available to you. But the ability to get the guaranteed transfer to your current school through the stability transfer, you'd have to meet those requirements as per the approved rules from the board for this particular plan.
Students moving from traditional to year-round elementary, but our base, middle, and highs are traditional calendars. What stability do those students get or families get for calendar?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question that we need to keep sort of reviewing and assessing. We get it. Changing calendar can be like, can be just as destabilizing as perhaps changing schools. And we do understand that. We're trying everything we can to try to reduce those impacts on families. But the reality is we have a high growth area. We have limited seats in schools. We have families who are moving into neighborhoods and can't even go to the school they're assigned to, and they're being sent to an overflow school. Because we're just trying to deal with the rapid growth that's happened in the region. And so we're trying our hardest with the resources that we have to get ahead of some of that growth where possible and to address that growth where possible. But we do realize that a change in calendar, in addition to a change in school, can feel almost like a double impact. We do understand that. As I mentioned, the board will still make available to you those other options. So if you're looking for a magnet or if you're looking for a traditional calendar somewhere else, you still have the option to apply for those. We're just really reduced in our ability as a district to guarantee some of those seats, and of course, to be able to provide transportation. I will say that middle school students, I think in this area, actually, I know in this area, with the current set of recommendations, it will create a base calendar misalignment for some families, meaning those students at Olive Chapel, perhaps that are currently assigned to Lufkin Middle or Salem Middle, they might be going to a traditional elementary and still be base assigned to a year-round middle school. We get that, we know that, we understand that. The reason for leaving those middle school assignments alone is multiple reasons. One, it sounds crazy, but the opening of Parkside Middle on the northern side of this region of the county is going to have domino and cascading impacts throughout this region. And we didn't want to get ahead of that proposal and then have families assigned, have changes in middle school assignment multiple times in a short period of time. We wanted to really make sure we knew what was happening with Parkside Middle before we came and changed any areas here. In addition, you'll notice that at the middle school level in particular, we're maintaining all the calendar application options in this region because we want to be able to make sure families have that ability at the middle school level to get that alignment for their families K-8. So you'll have the option to either stay at your multi-track year-round middle school or apply for that traditional calendar seat, most likely at Apex Middle in this region. So that is done intentionally with the idea of just let's take a breath, let's let the elementary proposal go through. If it does go through as written, then we'll come back and start looking at more permanent changes at the middle school level to give families that longer stability in calendar over time.
Why does Olive Chapel get special stability rules and Scotts Ridge Elementary doesn't when it's not capped, when it's not even capped?
Scotts Ridge Elementary is capped and capping. It is one of our cap schools, so I want to correct that statement. Olive Chapel, Apex Friendship, and Scotts Ridge in this region are all cap schools. If you go a little bit farther north, White Oak is also capped. If you go a little farther south, Oakview is also capped. You're in a heavily capped region of the district at the elementary level. The reason for the changes isn't so much about Olive Chapel as it is where the student is being assigned to. So any students that are being assigned into Pleasant Plains Elementary will have different stability rules, because as a district, we need to ensure that a sufficient number of students attend the new school to be able to offer all the academic programming that your students deserve. And so in order to do that, we have to have a certain number of students in the building to ensure that we can have the appropriate number of teachers, electives, specials, and all those other services that are required. Things like your special education teachers, your AIG teachers, your music, your art, all your media coordinator, all of those things that go into building a proper school environment. If we provide too generous of stability rules in the opening of a new school, there won't be a sufficient population to be able to make sure that all of those services are available for students. And so that's why the rules are slightly different. It's not so much about the sending school, it's really more about the receiving school.
The proposal has Olive Chapel year-round students moving to Baucom traditional, then feeding into Lufkin year-round, then Apex Friendship High School traditional. How can all of these calendar changes be justified with the stability pillar?
And again, I think I addressed that a couple of questions back. So this right now, we do recognize that that's in place. Part of the reason for leaving the assignment to Lufkin is any family who chooses stability and stays at Olive Chapel, then they'd have that Lufkin option so they could keep their family on their multi-track year-round calendar. In addition, in this region, we're maintaining the traditional calendar application choice at the middle school level for students and families, so that if you'd like to align to the traditional calendar, we'll do everything we can to help your family do that as well. In the future, we will come back to this region and make some more permanent adjustments at the middle school level that'll make a little bit more sense, because you're right, going from traditional to multi-track year-round middle to traditional high school, that is not a path that we want to sustain as a district. It will be possible that we'll have multi-track elementary going to traditional middle and traditional high school. That will become a little bit more normal as a district for us moving forward, at least for the time being, while we're still managing and responding to high growth. But that traditional to multi-track to traditional is not something we'd like to sustain as a district. So where we can't sustain it, we will provide that traditional option at the middle school level to try to give families that ability to get that K-8 or 6-12 calendar alignment.
There are, moving into planning process and assignment, there are
Sure.
a couple of questions about why specific areas are and are not assigned to some places. Jordan Point to Apex Friendship Elementary, why is it not assigned? Or, yeah.
Sure. Candidly, we have no space at Apex Friendship Elementary to add anybody. So if you're not already assigned to Apex Friendship Elementary as a district, we cannot in good conscience add any more neighborhoods to that attendance area at this time. In fact, there are 1 or 2 neighborhoods that are being proposed to come out of Apex Friendship Elementary and go to the new Pleasant Plains. And we do recognize this is one of those few exceptions where they're going to go to a school that's a little bit farther away. It's not significantly farther, but it is a little bit farther away. And we do understand that I don't even know how to say it, doesn't feel good, right? We do understand that, but Apex Friendship Elementary, much like Olive Chapel Elementary, is dealing with such growth and crowding that we have to find a way to provide relief to their base attendance area. And so that's why one of the recommendations was to do that. But candidly, there will be no recommendations to move students into Apex Friendship Elementary or into Olive Chapel Elementary for quite some time until we are able to manage the growth that's happening in those base attendance areas more effectively.
Why is Seagrove's Farms redistricted to Penny rather than Apex Elementary?
That's a really good question. The reasoning there was because Apex Elementary recently just had its cap removed, and it does still have some growth in its attendance area. So from a staff perspective, we were very hesitant to add back students that might put it back in a situation where it would need to be capped again. We were trying to provide stability for that school, and recognizing that the transportation route, and there's a neighborhood just right up the road that's already going to Penny Road from a cohort and sort of community continuity perspective. Geographically, it seemed to make sense that if it was going to need to leave Baucom, that it should join Penny Road.
Are there instances when concerns that have been addressed have been taken into account and the proposal was actually changed?
Absolutely. In fact, right now there's several recommendations that we're evaluating as a planning team that have come through, and we're confident that there'll probably be some recommendations during that October 15th presentation that reflect a responsiveness to that feedback. In years past, last year, it was a bit drastic, but there was an example where we needed to make an assignment change from a couple of multi-track year-round elementary schools into a traditional school. And at that point, the community was so supportive of multi-track, and we could use the additional capacity that we actually came back based on all of that feedback and made a recommendation to convert Pleasant Grove Elementary, which you may not be familiar with, but it's in the sort of Morrisville, Raleigh Airport area, to convert it to multi-track in response to that family feedback, that if you're going to assign us from our current school to a different school, can you at least let us maintain our calendar? We were able to accommodate that request. So yes, quite regularly there are adjustments that are made. Wholesale wide sweeping changes, most likely not, but adjustments based on feedback that make sense and support district initiatives, and can get, what we'd all like to call a win-win, support family feedback and community feedback, as well as address the needs of the district. We do take those into consideration, yes.
A number of people have asked the question, would you consider making Pleasant Plains traditional? Can you briefly review the position on Pleasant Plains?
Sure. Right now as staff, and I'm gonna take a moment of license. I'm gonna ask you to close your eyes a second while I go back in time. Come on, there we go. Just I want to give you a quick reminder of where the new schools in the region are coming. Here's where Pleasant Plains is coming. You'll notice Woods Creek is already open, and we're still facing all the crowding concerns that we're talking about. Now, Woods Creek is on the south side of US 1, so it's not quite in the same region. There is not a single elementary school in this region coming in the next 7 or so years. The current capital improvement plan goes out to 2030, 31. So based on what we're already talking about in terms of growth, crowding, continued growth, continued residential development, continued impacts in this region, as staff, we just really feel compelled to support the idea of getting as much capacity as we can out of this building day one. So that's really the rationale. Similar rationale for those in this region that are being impacted by these two schools. They do, however, have one more school coming online, but they're in a similar situation. No elementary schools coming through the 30-31 year at this time. And so in order to accommodate all the growth in the region, we just really feel like we need to have that capacity in hand so that we don't have to cap a school, 1 or 2 years into operation.
Why are the plans not prepared further in advance?
Great question. We've been getting that feedback a lot during our public engagement sessions this last spring. I hate to give a history lesson. We used to do these in December, and the board would approve them in February. So by the fact that we're doing them in September, this year we're even doing them 2 weeks earlier than we normally would do. So we are slowly but incrementally pulling the planning and release of initial drafts a little bit earlier in the year. So it may sound crazy to you, but we used to not give the initial draft until sometime in December. So the fact that we're now doing it in September already reflects responsiveness to that feedback, that we're pulling that timeline even earlier. We are going to continue to evaluate how early we can provide these initial drafts for feedback and review as we continue to improve our planning processes in the future. But please know that this release is the earliest release we've ever had.
And Susan, part of the question also seems to indicate that there may be the thought that nobody's thinking about this years prior. Can you address that for a moment?
Oh, certainly. So part of what we tried to walk you through with that 6-step process, for those of you that joined us early on, is we have been looking at projected growth and forecasted growth in this region for 20, 30 plus years. And we reevaluate and readjust those enrollment forecasts literally every single year. So keep in mind that when a school is opening, that means that at least 5, if not 10 years ago, we identified that the growth was coming in the region. The challenge for us as a district is we're an amazing place to live, work, and grow and play. And so the rapid rate of residential development it's just outpacing our ability as a county to build new schools. So we're doing our absolute best to try to track and be prepared for and recognize the growth that's coming and get ahead of it as much as possible. We just don't release the individual assignment areas until that year before, because so much can change. I'm sure many of you are familiar, a subdivision is supposed to pop up and it gets delayed for a couple of years. One that was supposed to take 3 years starts getting houses, sent out for mortgage within a year and a half. So there are always some nuance that can change as we get closer to the opening date of a school. So we are hesitant to establish full-blown attendance areas for schools too far in advance, because we want to be able to take advantage of the latest information before we release an attendance area. But we have been very thoughtfully thinking about the opening of Pleasant Plains for nigh on 10 to 15 years. And all of the schools in the district.
I don't have childcare for my children to attend different schools on different schedules. Do I have an option to keep my child in a traditional school?
Great. This is similar to some of the questions we had before, but very specific and nuanced. This is what that March hardship transfer request is for, is so that you can really express that specific hardship that you have as a family, and we'll do everything that we can to help support you in getting your students on the same calendar. Don't forget that there's always an opportunity to try to get them both on year-round, or to try to get them both on traditional. Our magnet schools, almost all of them operate on a traditional calendar. There's a handful of exceptions. So there's a lot of different ways for you to potentially get a traditional calendar option. And many of our magnet schools, particularly for this region, do come with some level of district transportation. So if you've never thought about one of our magnet schools, that may be something that solves for your family and gives your students access to some pretty amazing academic programming. If that's not what's going to work for your family, you can still use the traditional hardship or official request for transfer period in March to let our staff know. And those are all evaluated individually. Magnet applications are through lottery, but the the hardship or official request for transfer requests are all done on an individual basis, based on your individual circumstances, and evaluated against a portion of Board Policy 4150.
Why does New Hill get rezoned every year?
Whew. I don't know that it gets rezoned every year, but it certainly is a high growth area that has definitely popped up in recent years. We are continuously evaluating how frequently each area is being reassigned. It is our goal, it is my goal as a planner, to try to help give you as much stability as possible as a family. As a district, we don't have a hard and fast policy, but sort of our rule of thumb is no more frequently than every 3 years. And I know what that sounds like when I say that. That sounds absolutely terrible. That sounds like too frequent of a reassignment, but that's sort of the middle ground that we're kind of heading in our high growth areas. If by chance we've made a recommendation to an area that impacts them more frequently than every 3 years, we'll make those adjustments in our presentation in October. However, do keep in mind that as a district, again, I know how it sounds, I know how it feels as a family, but we do take that into consideration at each level. So it is possible that an area maybe had a high school change and then maybe had a middle school change and is now having an elementary change. Those are considered 3 different adjustments, but we are very keenly tracking cohorts to see what the impact has been on an individual cohort of students. And if we do discover that we're impacting the same cohort of students multiple times, we'll try to make some adjustments to account for that. So I'm glad someone asked that question, because that is something we deeply investigate during this time period. We try to get all of it leading up to the initial draft, and then we deeply investigate it during this period as well.
With the last about 5 minutes that we have for questions, I want to make sure that we get to some of the other categories.
Sure.
So first, with safety and transportation, are there any plans to add a new elementary school near New Hill? It seems like there's a lot of growth there, which would relieve places like Olive Chapel and Scotts Ridge.
Yeah. As I mentioned a couple of questions ago, I'll actually show this map because it has all of the schools on it. These are the only schools that are projected to open for 25-26. This one is actually a high school. As you can see, there's nothing in this area. We do have a piece of property in this region that we've acquired ahead of time, sort of responsive to these remarks. The challenge is it's just not ready for development yet. There's not enough infrastructure to it, no water, sewer, electric, that kind of thing. So we do what we call land bank. We do try to get ahead of growth wherever we possibly can. And so there is some land in the area that we already do have as a district in that bank. It's just not ready for the capital improvement plan to be able to turn it into a proper school until sometime after 2030, 31. But we are keeping an eye on this region and looking to identify where and when we could potentially pop up a new school. Again, this is part of the reason for the year-round recommendation, because that stretches that timeline for us a little bit as well.
Will Jordan Point have a traditional calendar option with transportation if this goes through?
Currently, as I mentioned in a couple of questions before, based on our challenges with transportation and bus driver shortages, it's becoming more and more and more difficult for us to guarantee transportation to opposite calendar options, either multi-track or traditional. So at this point in time, I cannot say that there'd be a guaranteed option with transportation. So I want to be honest. I want to be genuine there. But there will be options for families to request a traditional calendar, either through, like I said, the magnet application process. And some of those, as I mentioned, do come with district transportation. So that might be an option that would help families if the traditional calendar is really crucial. Or you can put in an official request for transfer. And of course, you'd have to figure out the transportation on your own. And that I do recognize is an obstacle that some families just can't manage. We get it. It's just a conflict where we just can't find a solution for all of the needs.
Moving in to kind of general questions about planning and assignment. Does WCPSS and Wake County / town planning work together to understand new communities and families that are enrolling?
Yes, and I will say those relationships have gotten better each year. If you're not familiar with how it works, in our district, the school district partners with the county commissioners to get funding and to get bonds approved so that we can build our new schools and do major renovations and that sort of thing. However, the municipal planners are responsible for their own types of development, residential development, transportation infrastructure, commercial development, that sort of thing. Our municipalities, Holly Springs, Apex, Cary, those names that you're familiar with, they don't have specific responsibilities for building schools or setting aside land for schools. It's just not part of how our governance works in the state of North Carolina. So over the last several years, we've developed much better and stronger partnerships with our municipal planners to say, hey, let's backfeed each other. So when we're developing a new school project, we're partnering with the municipal planners to make sure that all the roadway infrastructure is in place, that carpool is going to work, that the bus routes are going to work. And we're, partnering in those ways, making sure that there's access to the school and that sort of thing. On the other side of it, that long range forecast that I told you about, that's been a huge improvement with that relationship with our municipal partners. The only way that we can get this forecast that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation is because we go out to our municipal planners and they openly share with us what they know and what they're forecasting as far as residential development, commercial development, that sort of thing in their areas. We're actively going through that process this fall to get the updated numbers for the next forecast, which will be released in February. And that ongoing dialogue has really created a much healthier relationship between us and our municipal partners. In fact, there's 2 municipalities now I can say, which is double as many as we had last year at this time, that are actively seeking district input before approving residential developments in terms of is there space, is there availability. So those partnerships are getting stronger and stronger each year.
Okay. There are a number of other questions that obviously people would love to have answered and will be addressed if they're purely questions that are Q&A that we can anonymize at some level and really apply to the larger group. But at this point, we want to move back into our closing section for this meeting. And
So pause for a second. I think what
Yep.
Eric, just for clarity, what he's saying is that if you'll go to our enrollment proposal site, the 2025 enrollment proposal site, and find the section marked frequently asked questions, any questions that aren't already there with a response that you've asked tonight, we're going to be updating and really beefing that section up over the next week or so. So any question we couldn't get to Eric's point, that we can generalize to a larger scale. If you've given us some very specific information that's very nuanced about your student, we'll see if a staff member can reach out and help you with that. But we're going to get those questions and responses in that FAQ portion, the frequently asked questions portion of this top website here, this one right here. Thank you, Eric. Sorry.
No, certainly. And thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. We know that there's a lot of information that comes at you really fast, a lot of other things that you need to think about and you want to know as you go forward. We hope that what we've been able to present to you in this session tonight has been informative, and that you better understand the recommendations included in the initial draft of the plan. Separately, we really want your open and honest participation and appreciate that. Your input and your feedback is vital to the refinement of the enrollment plan. Remember, we will present a summary of the feedback received and any recommended adjustments to the proposal of the board, to the proposal to the board on October 15th, with a final vote that is expected on November 26th. The thought exchange itself will remain open through September 29th, and we encourage you to continue to post comments, rate comments, and explore the exchange. Thank you very much for attending this evening. We hope that you enjoy the remainder of your evening.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.